This is the informative speech, 5 minutes long. I have 5 people in the audience today. On the left, that's 1, my brother 2, my mother, that's 3, my friend Lewis is 4, and my dad 5, and you start to see Stephanie on the left. You can see, yep. All right, starting in 3, 2, 1. Today I will talk to you about one of the most controversial people in human history. This person is Jesus Christ. While there are just multitudes of beliefs and opinions concerning who Jesus is and who he claimed to be, today I simply wish to let Jesus speak for himself. In other words, according to Jesus himself, who did he claim to be? With that said, today we will look at eyewitness testimony, the eyewitness historical account of the life and the death of Jesus Christ. Specifically, the historical account written by a man named John the Apostle. In the 7th to 10th chapter of John's historical account, he records for us a situation, which is to say the least, one of much turmoil, one of much tension. The time is 2,000 years ago. The occasion is a Jewish festival called the Feast of Booths. And the controversy is concerning the person of Jesus Christ. So, in response to Jesus' works and his teachings, especially his teachings, there is just this incredible amount of dispute. A dispute that exists among the Jewish people and the Pharisees being the religious leaders at that time in ancient Israel. And that dispute is specifically over who Jesus is, and even more so, who he claimed to be. In chapters 8, verse 58 of John's account, we find one of Jesus' most controversial claims, if not the most controversial. And this claim, it just pours gasoline on the fire of this very conflict. He says, starting in verse 58, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am." And so while time just doesn't permit me to give you a proper context and background of what led Jesus to say this, today we will simply look at what Jesus meant by this statement, and then how the Jews responded when they heard it. Jesus said, "Before Abraham was, I am." Now what made this statement so controversial was that this man, Abraham, lived over 1,500 years before Jesus. And yet Jesus says, "Before Abraham, I am." But Jesus isn't talking from thin air. He's actually referencing the second book of the Bible, the Pentateuch, called Exodus. In the book of Exodus, Israel is seen in slavery under Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, one of the most powerful kingdoms in ancient history. And so God, in response to this, he raises up this man named Moses and tells Moses to go to Pharaoh and then command him to let God's people go. Moses, in response to this command from God, asks God a question. Moses asked God for his name. God, in what is just a gracious response, says to Moses, "I am who I am." And if you read Hebrew, which is the language the book of Exodus is written in, you would read it this way: "I am Yahweh." You see, Yahweh is the covenantal name of God. It is the covenantal name of God that God uses to distinguish himself apart from all the false gods of the nations. In it, he distinguishes himself as the one true God who is forever faithful to his people. So when we read Jesus saying, "Before Abraham, I am," what the Jews heard, and what Jesus is actually saying, what he meant by this, is that he was Yahweh. That he is Yahweh. That he is the same Yahweh of Exodus chapter 3. He's claiming none other than deity. So why did the Jews give such a fiery response to Jesus' claim? You see, commanded under the Old Testament law, if any man claimed to be God, they were to be stoned to death for blasphemy. And this is exactly what the Jewish people attempt to do to Jesus. Right after they hear this, they pick up stones to stone him. In John chapter 8, verse 59, which is John's historical account, so they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. You see, the Jewish people, when they heard this, they completely understood that Jesus was claiming deity. he was claiming to be their creator. This is why in John chapter 10, verse 33, they say to Jesus, "It is not for a good work that we are going to stone you, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself out to be God." And so while there are just a multitude of beliefs and opinions concerning who Jesus is and who he claimed to be, the fact is, eyewitness testimony shows that Jesus claimed to be God. So when you come across the person of Jesus Christ, and you decide for yourself what you will believe about him, may you remember this historical eyewitness testimony, where Jesus himself claims to be your creator. May you remember this so that when you make a decision as to what you will believe about Jesus, that you'll make a wise one. A wise decision that takes Jesus' own words into account. Thank you.